Good afternoon. This is the Thursday, September 21st, 2017 meeting of the Athens City Planning Commission. All members are present, so a quorum has been established. Are there any individuals out in the audience who intend to address the Planning Commission today? If so, raise your right hand. And do you solemnly swear to tell the truth to the Planning Commission as you know it? Thank you very much. Disposition of minutes. Are there any comments, additions, changes?
They were very detailed. So we did a detailed review of the details from our last meeting. And I will point out, Christy, I had Patty put by right like that in terms of the solar discussion.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because I wasn't sure how else to make that notation, so. Where they wanted to have certain accessory structures by right, so just.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's, yeah, I'm totally fine with that.
That works? Okay.
Anything else? Is there a motion to adopt?
Move.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
And 4 in favor and 1 abstention. Cases today, case number 17-17, Title 43, Wireless Telecommunications at 13 East Washington Street, modification. Mr. Suroy,
Yes.
good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and public. This is a Title 43 Wireless Communications Review, modification only, on 13 East Washington Street in Athens. Verizon Wireless is planning to upgrade and add equipment to new antennas on an existing 34-foot self-supporting tower. The total height of the tower to include the city garage is 104 feet. And again, it's located at the top level of the city parking garage. This new request involves modifying an antenna platform on the tower. No changes to the height or the footprint of the tower will be made. Verizon is proposing to modify the platform as follows: removing and replacing 9 existing panel antennas, removing and replacing 6 existing remote radio heads, removing and replacing 3 overvoltage protection distribution boxes, and removing and relocating on the same platform existing Verizon antennas. Proper supporting documents were provided for the structural analysis and wind foundation requirements. After review of the documents, it was determined that it met with code requirements under Title 43. The applicant is Verizon Wireless. Agent is Rich Hansen. Property owner is the City of Athens. The location is, again, 13 East Washington Street. The zoning is B2D, and the estimated value of improvement is $55,000.
Is there any representative that wishes to speak or, okay.
I have been in communication with Mr. Hansen. He did provide the state inspection, and that required the property owner's, concurrence. And now he is just seeking approval to make these swap outs, I guess.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Would there be a motion then to accept?
I move that we approve case 1717, Title 43 Wireless Communication, 13 East Washington Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nancy, was that a
That was a reluctant vote.
reluctant vote? So it's
I think we should be seeing
unanimous.
I guess.
By the way, I forgot if there are any individuals in our live audience that need a little amplification in terms of hearing. We have something up here available to you, so just let us know. Case number 17-18, Title 41, IAW 41.10 E, major modification, Genesis 3 building, 20 East State Street. Mr. Suroy?
Yes, the previous application is Title 41 16-00006, was for the construction on an existing building to compromise an addition and alteration to the Genesis 3 Matters building. This will involve changing the existing one-story plus basement to a four-story building to include a basement. The improvement will allow the basement to continue to be used as an area for precision imprints. The main first floor to be occupied retail and currently Zoe's and Passionworks. The second floor story will add 7 bedrooms with living areas. The third floor story will have 11 bedrooms with living areas. This new request is for a modification/change to the site plans for the addition of 1 apartment with 4 bedrooms on the second floor, where the previous plans reflected the area as a common room and common space. Departmental plans and reviews. Myself, previously approved by Planning Commission on September 1st, 2016. There's no change in the square footage. There's no change in the parking requirements. Total spaces required was 27, and 29 spaces are provided. Dumpster screening is being provided. City Planner Paul Logue, no comments. City Engineer recalculated the tap fees, and those were provided. The City Fire Chief, no comment. And the Police Department, Captain Harvey, no building concerns.
Are there any representatives who would wish to come and address the Planning Commission? And please state your name and company that you work for, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Michael Carruthers. I'm with RVC Architects. And I think Rick explained exactly what we're intending to do pretty well. But we had a common area on the second floor, and we found enough parking that should allow us to accommodate this new apartment.
I just want to make a statement as a point of order. Is the reason this is back before us is because the plans that we approved had this common area, and then they were changed to increase the bedroom units. And under our Title 41, it states that that's a major change and has to come back to us. And I really feel like we should have known about it in advance. My understanding is that the director discovered this, and so not that it matters, it's just a point of order that, you know, when plans are changed, we approve plans as they're presented, and when they change, they have to come back and seek approval. So that's why we're here.
Are there any questions or comments?
I think David would like to speak to that.
David Moran, RVC Architects. Well, when we started in September of 2016, there was no intent to increase the number of the bedrooms or apartments. And we had started construction on that. In the course of construction, the owners decided, you know, I don't know, evaluating the financial part of the project, that there'd be more bang for the buck if they converted the common space into apartments. They never brought that to our attention at the beginning. We were under construction. We always intended to go back to the city with that, but we just, under their deadlines that they wanted, we had to get the building underway, started. If you guys rejected it and it had to remain in commons, so be it. But we had to get going on the building to get it completed in time for when they wanted to rent the spaces out. So it wasn't deception on anybody's part. I mean, Mike LaRue kind of naively went to the city requesting addresses and stuff, and that's when they brought it to the attention of the city. But we always had intended to resubmit it and start again with trying to get the city's approval of that additional apartment.
I guess I would just say there's some things in Title 41 that can be deemed minor, that we have the authority, or I would have the authority to
Yes.
view that as minor. But the increase in the bedroom size is not one of
Right.
those, so that's why you're here.
Yeah.
I am not calling anyone deceptive. It's a
Right.
process, and we
Yeah.
just want to make sure that we're all following the process.
Of course.
Are there any questions, comments, observations?
There's nothing else needed because the parking spaces have been defined and determined?
Do you want to?
I just want to
Kristen?
make sure, in terms of the number of accessible parking spaces, do they meet code requirements for that?
Yes, it does, yeah.
Okay.
And there's also a possibility of adding an additional handicap spot in front of actually Passion Works. We had some discussion on that.
Okay.
But that's
It was
separate.
just,
Yeah.
it is separate, and just to inform
separate.
everyone that that was just put in today. So there is an accessible parking space right in front of Passion Works, which, through my lens and understanding and knowing what Passion Works is, who their clients are, we should have done that
Yes,
a
we
long time
should have.
ago. But that all said, that there is now an accessible parking space right there in front of Passion Works, closest to where the curb cut exists currently to get into Mike LaRue's parking area on the side, which you're looking at right here, so that it's right here.
Okay.
No, but part of this has, Nancy had asked about park overnight, but part of this is a commercial,
Business.
and we require that, so that's.
So then using it for this development with new bedrooms would probably not be something they could promise, right?
It was to meet the commercial.
I
Am I
understand that,
missing
but I'm
something?
talking about the
But
new
the-
bedrooms.
There was no handicap parking actually available for any of the commercial spots.
Okay.
So we identified it as part of the process to make
And I
it
was just
complete.
asking about the residential.
Right, right.
And
They
so
have an
over-
additional parking, handicap parking spot identified.
I thought I remembered it, but, you know, it doesn't, it wouldn't apply to this change. You couldn't promise it, I wouldn't think. Well, you could, but I don't know if you should.
Let's see, anything else?
No, I just wanted to clarify
Okay.
that.
Does someone want to put a motion forth?
I would like to make a motion to approve case 17-18, major modification to the Genesis 3 building at 20 East State Street.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nancy?
I don't know, no living space up there, huh? I don't care. No.
Was that a no?
That's creating a dorm uptown.
I'm sorry, that was a no then?
It was a no.
Okay. We have 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Communications, the West Union lot split. Art, did you want to come up?
Art Ostrike, Jackie O's. So let's see, I'll just start with, been uptown for almost 12 years now, and I've never really had an opportunity to purchase anything up there, be it at 24 West Union, 22, or where our kitchen is, kind of within the Union's building. With the fire, obviously there was a whole bunch of construction that came with that. We now have the opportunity to, it's been put forth that the building that houses the public house, which is 22 and 18, as well as the Union, which is owned by Mesta Properties, they're willing to sell. And it's great, but rather than complicate my life any more than it already is, it would be nice to separate the two, but I'm not sure if we can do that. I've worked with Rick quite a bit on this one. It's all up to current building standards. It's entirely sprinkled, but our kitchen is within the Union's building if you're looking at it from the street. And that's the one caveat to it. I think maybe how to verbalize a split and things like that. And so done a lot of research on those buildings and what it would take, be it from city and or structural planning and whatnot within the state, to see if there's a way to split those. And I shot through some old deeds and stuff that happen around, that are on file within the city, about the word I'm looking for, that has a stairwell within another building or something like that. And I'm just seeing if there's a way that we could do that before I call a surveyor in to write up the verbiage how you guys kind of recommend to do so. Did that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how you craft out a portion of a building and title it to another building. I don't know, Chris, do you have any?
That's beyond the scope of my experiences.
Do easements,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just would, an easement, be able to clarify that?
Currently the buildings are two separate pieces of real estate, correct?
They are currently one.
It's one piece of real estate
It's
today?
one piece of real estate, but as you look at it from, you know, if you're standing in the middle of the road,
Right.
the public house is lower than the Union building.
Right.
And then and above the public house, not including the kitchen, that used to be its own building and its own piece of property. At some point, they were combined together in the past, and then I'm pretty sure, I don't know my historical data perfectly up there, but the townhouse in the 50s kind of took the half of the downstairs floor of the Union. So that's why the Union is skinnier downstairs than upstairs.
Okay. So today Jackie O's and the Union are one piece of real estate, two buildings on one piece of land?
Correct.
Is that what you said? All right.
That's what I believe, yes.
So there's at least, so the subdivision would be separating the two buildings. Yeah, splitting those. And I'm not sure, but you may be able to have, I would check with a local an attorney to confirm, but you may be able to get the kitchen area designated as a legal encroachment into the Union's property. And that might be something that the city would have to approve as part of the subdivision, basically a variance from our subdivision regulations to allow that. But that may actually just be a civil issue too. So that long term, so when if somebody purchases the piece of real estate where the Union is, they know that there's this legal encroachment that they always have to work around, and that legal encroachment is owned by whoever owns the piece of real estate where Jackie O's sits today. I think that might be the easiest solution. But
that sounds great.
I don't know. I don't know that we've ever had to deal with this question before.
Yeah.
I haven't in my 9 years.
Yeah, based on the observation of the auditor's site, it looks like we'll have to do a width to depth ratio, 1 to 3. It won't meet that.
Right.
But otherwise, basically you draw a straight line. Anything encroachment would involve any easements between the owners and have to have legalese for it. But from our perspective, we are basically dealing with the property lines. Anything encroaching on that would have to have some sort of easement or agreement between the owners. That's what I'm understanding, that's what I'm thinking.
Well, even if we were to approve the split,
Yeah.
without dealing with the encroachment issue, there'd be no way to convey the Union and the two pieces of real estate separately to the Union and Jackie O's. You could not convey them because Jackie O's is reliant upon the Union because of the kitchen, and so there'd be no way to get clear title until that encroachment issue with the kitchen was addressed. Everything's fine as long as Mesta Properties owns both, but you'd have to have that conveyance, that encroachment. It's no different than if you've got two adjoining property owners, both with single-family homes, and my driveway just happens to have a small portion of my driveway encroaches on my neighbor's piece of real estate. I could not sell my property or refinance or do anything with that unless that driveway encroachment is confirmed and also agreed with the adjoining property owner.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, that's it.
Having said that, we are dealing with currently with a piece of property where the roof tends to overshadow on another piece of property, so they've kind of notched that out, and which we can approve, and both owners agreed to that. So, and it doesn't infringe on any setbacks or anything like that. This is a unique situation because of the buildings. So there might be a way to notch that out, but I think to make life easier, we just do a straight lot split, and then through easements, and encroachment through the owners, that would be the best way to go, the easiest way to go.
Can I ask, is there, for the Union, so let's just talk about the Union portion of this property, is there a basement associated with?
Crawl space.
It's a crawl space. So there's not a functional basement underneath there as well, to where it would be even more odd in terms of parsing it out if there was a basement that was relied on by the union as an entity.
Correct.
Okay, so we're just talking crawl space and the first floor kitchen area,
Yes.
and then the union as an entity retains then the upper space that is over. Yeah, this is a
Yeah, it's an
complicated
interesting one,
case.
because then
It really is.
as we've done the post-fire changes in the building kind of that's in the alley, that was kind of in question and wasn't structurally sound, I'll say, and ended up getting messed with in the construction site due to safety reasons. It's kind of split like the same way the first floor is in the back, where the union's got storage on the smaller side of the first floor, and we've got an extension of our kitchen where the bakery is kind of in line with our kitchen. It's all in the plans, but, you know, before I go get the verbiage drawn up to split them or to have verbiage that might make sense for everybody or work for everybody, I just wanted to tell you what I'm up to and
Sure.
see.
As
where it
complicated as this is, you know, I think what Mr. Logue just represented, or the way you described it, is likely the best path forward, or it's a path forward.
Yeah, I don't know that the city, I mean, from our subdivision regulations, subdivision is really about the partitioning of of land. So the buildings are a separate issue, but I think as long as Mesta applies for a lot split and owns all of it, and we can approve a lot split to the same owner, because they own everything, and so then it's a question of how they convey. So if Mesta owns and wants to sell to Mr. Ostrike a portion of what we approved for the split, it's up to the bank, the title attorney, and the property owners to figure out the conveyance to make sure that Jackie O's always has access to that kitchen. Mm-hmm. Or they may say, no, you're not gonna have that kitchen. You know, they could convey without that agreement, and then the Jackie O's has no access to a kitchen, so they either have to stop selling food or build a new kitchen on their own piece of real estate. So, but that, I think that encroachment issue is, I think that's more of a civil real estate issue rather than a city issue. But I don't know, I'm just not sure.
So then I get into the auditors and how to properly allocate property tax to said property, to the one that would be ours or the one that would be the union's.
I think that would be a civil, that would be a legal agreement between two parties rather than a city issue.
And they'll work off the square footage.
Right. I would think the auditor will bill the owner of the union real estate, and they will bill the owner of Jackie O's real estate for that piece of land. And then whatever agreement is set aside for a certain percentage of the property taxes are paid by Jackie O's or whatever that company may be. I think those are separate issues.
Okay.
You know, as long as the auditor is getting paid,
Yeah, then
you know,
everybody's
they're
happy.
gonna assume that whoever owns the land has to pay the bill, and if that person says, well, no, Jackie O's has to pay 25% of that, the auditor's gonna say, well, you legally have to pay me 100, you figure out that 25% with Mr. Ostrike. I think.
So
Well-
first step would be getting the verbiage. Sorry, Paul.
I'm sorry. I heard in the beginning, though, that we don't meet depth to width ratio.
But yeah, those are issues we would have to.
So those
we
are,
have
so
to deal with
it would
that.
be a recommendation to council
Right,
again.
correct.
Okay, just trying to find our role. But, you know, maybe it does work like a driveway easement, but it just seems so different, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So is the depth to width ratio the only potential kind of variance that we would be looking at based on what
Basically,
you've
yes.
seen so far?
Yes, what I've seen so
Okay.
far. I mean, it's all packed in. It's not like there are setbacks.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you mentioned something about the roof lines, so
No, not the roof line. We're looking at the property lines. Just the square piece of property. What's up and down has nothing to do with the lot split.
Right.
Okay.
I get it.
you think? I mean, we've had people before us that says, you know, their house is just over somebody else's house, and then trying to divide it and redraw the lines.
Get the surveyor to do it and file the survey.
Yeah, I don't know. Complicated.
It is complicated, and that's why I'd rather just come out and ask questions and rather than beg for forgiveness later. I mean, right? Yeah, I mean, obviously I've got some things that have to fall in line for this to all work anyways, but I just wanted to make sure I had a good sense of where to go and where to take this. But either way, we would need to get a site survey done for somebody in this process with exactly how the kitchen is cut out. Because I mean, it's easy with the buildings, there's a pretty direct straight line. And then an easement or a lot split to get in and bring the kitchen into the Jackie O side of it. Because you can't even access the kitchen today without walking down to the sidewalk or down to the alley and coming back in.
I saw you shaking your head because that was getting more to what you think is outside our purview.
I think we would be splitting down the middle, the common wall between Jackie O's and the Union.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we would, the only way for us to carve out a portion of the Union building to ownership that conveys separately, I think we'd actually, you guys would have to structure it as a condominium. Where, and that's a really complicated legal process. I mean, like we've got the condominiums on Schaefer Street. So different ownership owns different levels of a building. That's the only way that could happen, because a lot split process is addressing a land, not the building. Now, so sometimes, yeah, okay, my house is straddled over onto my neighbor's property, but I'm actually buying land from my neighbor to address that issue. I'm not asking them to own the land and I get this air rights or something. That's how condominiums are handled, where you just own building, not land. So I think our responsibility, would be to just address separating the two buildings into two pieces of land. And then if a portion that one building owner needs to operate happens to be in the other building owner's building, that is an issue between the two of them to work out at the time that they want to purchase. And that's not an issue for the city to be involved with. That's a civil issue, so that everybody's financing and deeds and all that all lines up. But that's your own issue. I should have even said deed there, but but what you'd have to arrange for is to have a legal encroachment onto the other property owner's land, so that you always have that access, you always have that encroachment. And probably that encroachment should be for the purposes of operating a kitchen for the other property. And I think that's it, though. Otherwise, I don't know how we would do it without getting into questions of actually establishing condominium. And that would be a very complicated process, more complicated than this. It's complicated enough having a kitchen in another building, but.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Right.
So when you look at it from a bird's eye view, that line's not necessarily going to be straight either, since the changes that happened with the rebuild.
That I don't know. I need to see that bird's eye view.
Okay.
It's on what we have?
It should be somewhere.
Oh, maybe we have another one. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, if you look at S01.
Why aren't they alphabetical?
That's chart, it's S101.
Okay. On this bigger one on the page. Yeah.
I feel like I want to go point at you guys.
Yeah, please.
If you look, here's our current bar, that line. So our kitchen is from here this way on the piece of paper, but then it has, if you continued that line, we would head right into at least a couple of feet of the storage of the Union in the back here. So our property line, or the kitchen is currently this line. It kind of shoots that way, and this is currently part of the union in there. Because it's all, 110-odd-year-old building, so even here, the actual building runs this way, but then it juts there before continuing, and that's something that happened a long time
Straight across, and then
So
anything
this right here
over
is
to the other.
part of Jackie O's.
This is our kitchen,
That's crazy.
okay, and then on the second floor, these are stairs going up from the union, so we're pretty intertwined in the back there. And then this is where am I at? This is the edge of the kitchen here, but then it bounces back and runs this way. This is us, and then it comes back this way and that way, is how it's currently set up within our lease. At least. We can't go in between. Again, nowhere here can we get into the union from there, but
Did the Colossuses own both buildings at one point?
I
Years
believe
ago?
so. I know that Manny was their grandpa. Yeah, Manny Chivas. He ran the townhouse. I'm not sure when they got the union in there.
Okay, so that's probably what he just decided to create a little extra space since he owned both buildings.
Yeah, or there was a notch that he was using, and they're like, you want to rent this? And he said, sure, and off it went. And here we are 40, 50 years later.
Okay.
Did they do any GPS work when they were, I realize it was big hurry, everything, but, would they have coordinates on any of these spots?
I would imagine, and
I mean, the builders or the guys who did the plans.
the BDT folks, I'm sure they have something, and, I talked to Jim, who kind of ran that project, Jim Thomas, who ran that project down there, and it gets real complicated, and everyone's like, I don't know what to do and how to deal with it, and so before I pay a surveyor to come in and do something, I want to know what to tell the surveyor to look at.
It'll be less if you had to.
All right, I'll just say my best legal advice is to seek legal advice. There are
Find
attorneys
I've done
locally.
that, and that's why I'm standing here.
Okay, he said come to the planning commission?
Yeah, because we're not sure who to really go to. I've worked with Rick, but it's very complicated with what makes the most sense. And my attorney was like, hey, maybe come and talk here because we're looking for advice. I've talked to the fire chief, talked to the state structural guy who does the area. Just trying to get some answers so I can move forward this way.
I mean, I'm looking at this deed, the general warranty deed from the Colossuses, and they do have the west half of this lot and the east one half
Right.
of this lot. So to me, there's got to be a way.
2005.
I mean, look at that, east one half of lot number 42.
Yeah, also, the right to the grantees herein is that her heirs and assigns forever to erect at her expense and perpetually maintain a stairway 3.5 feet wide inside the south side of the brick store building is situated north of, and yada, yada, yada. So where it's in there, and it's happened in years past, and this is an old dated agreement, but, when we saw this as we're digging down some rabbit holes, and it's like, okay, well, that's something that's happened here. The buildings are, entirely sprinkled and separated from within. Our kitchen is more part of the public house than it's part of the union today, except for the fact that we're below the upstairs, half of the upstairs of the unit.
Have you spoken with the county auditor?
Not yet.
I'd encourage that conversation as well.
Okay.
You think?
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
Would the city even allow for something like this if somebody came in and?
Again, I would look primarily at basically a square. And then anything that's crossing over, they would have to have agreements much like they have now.
Okay.
And then it's the width to depth ratio is what we'd look at. And any crossover of notching, I wouldn't allow any notching of the property
Right.
to go around.
Yes.
And, I mean, you could, I guess, if you would approve it, but based on the fact that I can't do irregular lots or any of that, I try to do straight box-type lots. And that would probably make it easy.
it's the same auditor.
And then they just come back and go get their deed and encroachments for them to do the notch outs.
even if we did do the notching, it would create similar problems if the upper floors, you would still have to work out some sort of encroachment
That's
agreement.
correct,
So,
that's correct.
yeah.
So either way, yeah. So if we just deal with the property,
Yeah,
and God forbid something happens again, at least they have that to work with as a property.
right.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's the way I'm looking at it.
Because then I worry if, you know, I love my neighbors, and that's all great, and we all get along just great, but, you know, if they're not here, or I'm not here, but just trying to stipulate, this is what this is, moving forward, I'm like, okay, well, what makes the most sense? And I'm with you. It doesn't make any sense to have this notch out in the building, other than the fact that the current use of the building, you would have to do so much work to bring our kitchen back into the union's fold, is in terms of architects and state approvals and plans and all that. Under its current setup, it would take way more money and time and effort to pull it back into the union's universe.
Well, I think what I'm saying is that either way, even if we did the notching, that would create complications on our end, but you'd still need some sort of an encroachment agreement so that the upper levels of the union building would belong to them, essentially, and they would have access. So from our perspective, I think what Mr. Soroy and Mr. Logue have been saying, like, let's just straight lines, from our perspective, handle it that way, and then let you handle with the
Encroachment.
yeah, like handle the encroachment with the current property owner so that it's, you know, you've got it dealt with, you've got it recorded in a way that as future transfers of property happen, people have access to those buildings, but address that kind of separately from us. I agree with that as the.
So either way, I'd still want to get the surveying done for the encroachment purposes down the road.
I would talk specifically to an attorney about the language about that for your, you know, for your ability to access that space and for, you know, future property owners to have that, have a record of that so that, you know, as property changes hands, you don't have to work through that. But I think from our perspective, like, you know, we just need to look at the lines on the property rather than the buildings in particular.
And then make a visit with the county auditors to see how they would tax that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm sure they'll address it in square footage.
yeah. And then it'll come out the encroachment and the whatever agreement.
And whatever
is written
agreement
up
that
this
you
way.
draft up,
Right.
that's correct.
Thanks, I'll see you in a month or two.
Sorry about that.
Let's see. All right, bylaws and rules of order. We have listed on there as a communication, so.
I just have very briefly to report. I made a few changes based on our meeting last month. Some comments from the commission about making sure we clarified site visit, special session, and work session, I believe. So I did add a few sentences in. I forwarded the entire document up to our law director and requested her review. She was on vacation for a bit, but she has not had a chance yet. I'm going to meet with her on Monday afternoon, I believe, to double check, and then I'll have better information for you at the next planning commission meeting.
Anything else to offer on that? Okay. Would this be the opportunity really to, when we talked about the Genesis building, would this be the opportunity just for me to, again, voice concern that I've had in the past as far as the sky view in the uptown area diminishing as more people get the idea of adding on to current buildings? And is that something that we want to look at, make a comment on, or whatever? But
I
with
guess-
West Union, when they added, because of the basement situation, when they added the rooms up top, and now we're getting, with the Genesis 3 building there on State, my own concern is when you go down West Union, despite the great work that the city has done in terms of improving the ambiance of the street itself, you know, the fact that that new building really does tend to cut down on daylight, on skylight that really comes into the community. And I was a little concerned about, I mentioned this I think a couple years ago, is like what happens theoretically if other people, you know, begin to add on to the uptown area. So
I would do that more, and it might be a nice segue into the planner's report today, as something that would become from a change in code. Because right now, Genesis met code. I think it was 3. I don't even think it was 3.5 in that area. And so we have a 3.5 story limitation throughout the city. But as we've talked about ourselves, sometimes, you know, 3.5 at one elevation versus another elevation, that I don't think it would be applicable to our communication of bylaws and rules and order. We could put it on a future agenda.
And I don't think that parking, you know, the fact that, I don't think that that in itself would restrict people, because the Planning Commission in the past has been open to the idea of off the parking at some other piece of property, you know, or some other lot someplace in town. So, you know, those are the things I'd really kind of like to maybe take a look at, because, yeah, right now, if they meet code, we don't really have a lot of pushback on that.
Right.
And the fundamental problem as well is that they rent the parking places even though we stipulate you have to have them. And I think that creates problems, which may be solved in the neighborhoods by this new parking ordinance, and then again, it may not.
Well, again, I would say from the optimal college town assessment survey, where parking was all over the place, parking from the university's perspective and the city's perspective. So the comprehensive plan visioning session this evening might be a wonderful opportunity to go and talk about those kind of things that we see.
Schools?
I agree, which is at 6:30 this evening
Yes.
in the community center,
Right.
being led
And
by
Athens.
city planner as well as the Athens County Foundation. But yeah, this kind of a conversation, this topic, I think, would be well suited in the next 20-year comprehensive plan. You know, one comment on the parking, and I just share this because I've heard from property owners who are within the B2D area on Court Street, but still having parking requirements, and those individuals on the flip of this being impacted to where a lot of their tenants don't bring their cars here to Athens. And why would you if you live within a block of OU College Green and campus? But they are required by law to have X number of parking spaces, and to make it work without losing money, which they do, they can't get people, even if they threw it out there on the market to try and lease parking spaces. Since someone can get a parking space for $50 a quarter mile away, you know, they're going to go there as opposed to somewhere right in town where they would have to lease that space for 3 times that amount, and nobody wants to pay it. But again, you know, my sense in hearing this is that fewer and fewer individuals who are renting apartment spaces that close to campus don't bring a car to the city of Athens. You know, there might be, if it's a place that has a unit that has 4 beds or 3 beds or whatever, there may be one of those 3 who has a car, which services all of them, as opposed to them being required to have 3 parking spaces. So it's an interesting, complicated issue.
With all due respect,
Sure.
we've heard this before, and they always have tenants that are PhDs that walk stocking-footed from between 3 and 4 in the morning and have no cars. But, you know, in my neighborhood, and even adjacent to my neighborhood, there is a serious parking problem, and people get really, really frustrated.
Yeah.
And I think that they all say, okay, so I'm renting to an old person that has a walker, so he doesn't drive. So I don't need another space. But what if he moves on?
Yeah.
What do I do next time?
Sure. No,
He was talking.
I'm speaking specifically of the uptown area. I'm not. But
No, but I meant there is a serious parking problem. And it's B2D, Heard it, been there, heard it, been there.
5 times.
Has it been 5? I
You're
thought
more
it was
than
only
5.
4, okay.
More than 5. I'm sorry, I don't mean to belittle people's opinions, but they want to take those second floors and flip them into apartments with only kitchens and bedrooms, like a dorm. It's going to be the new swimming pool.
Thank you, Ms. Bain. Report from the city planner.
Comprehensive plan visioning session is this evening, starting at 6:30 p.m. at the community center, rooms A, B, and C. It is open to the public. I would encourage all members of the Planning Commission to attend if they can. If they can't for whatever reason, we will be offering alternative methods to participate in the visioning aspect. It does seem like things like parking and height of buildings and all of those issues are really important things to address in a comprehensive plan process. The only other thing to report this afternoon, Rick and I both have been working with Sarah Conley from the Soul Smart program. We do have a city webpage up and active on the city site that provides all the information that they have done to meet the requirements to get the bronze designation. And we've been working really close with them to help out. And I think Rick attended a meeting yesterday relating to installation issues.
And you have a little event next week?
State Planning Conference is next week in Athens, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
Yes.
I woke up the next morning after our meeting and I said, oh my God, you know, if I'm the only one on the planning commission that's lot met the, or whatever it was you were talking about. I have a big lot all downhill. But, you know, putting panels on the ground, I mean, would we even consider that unless we had a full-blown analysis? I mean, it's all well and good for Sarah Conley who doesn't...
Who's we? You or the...
Well, we
or the city?
Eventually recommending something to the council.
I don't have a good answer to that. Rick and I expressed some concerns about ground mount systems in single-family neighborhoods specifically.
In our district, really.
Sure, that's fine. I'm really indifferent to it, but we said that we think there'll be concerns with that happening. We were more concerned about aesthetic issues and neighbors having problems with it.
The whole ball of wax.
Other than that, I don't have a good question or a good answer. If we're moving forward with something, you know, there's going to be a recommendation from SoulSmart as to what they think is best based on that issue, and then the Planning Commission, if it's a question of zoning issues and we want to move forward with it, then those are discussions for the 5 of you to have and to forward that over to City Council. But I'm not going to dismiss something immediately and say that's off. You know, if the Planning Commission wants to convey that, I can tell Sarah, ground mount is not up for discussion, but I don't think the 5 of you have had that discussion yet.
I'm alarmed, but I would like some information from other places that allow them on teeny tiny little lots, 40 by 125 commonly.
I don't know that I mean, I don't have that information.
Well, I mean, you know, I didn't bring it up either.
Right.
But, you know, if these if there's a bronze involved, I mean, there's also a neighborhood involved and issues that...
Yes, I don't believe code changes are required to get the bronze designation.
No, I'm just saying advocating for ground-based is folly, I think, in a residential area. But that's only my opinion. We'll see.
Noted,
We'll get the citizens in to talk to you all.
Not talk to me.
No, I meant then council and so on, what it was.
Any other comments for Mr. Loeb? Thank you, Mr. Suroy.
Thank you. No comment.
No comments today. Do you have a report?
No.
No, we're done. Okay. Opportunities for members of our live audience to address the commission. Is there anyone out there who wishes to speak? Okay, thank you very much. Announcements and other business.
Comprehensive plan visioning.
Okay.
Tonight, 6:30.
Our next meeting would be October 5th, 2017, here at City Hall. And with the Athens City Planning Commission's business concluded, this meeting stands adjourned.